really, really disturbing. On one hand, on the other hand, the enormous support of good people on the planet for this movement of standing together with humanity, that every life matters. We are all part of one family. This awareness has also been kindled. In one hand, on one hand, it is painful. On the other hand, it has created tremendous awareness among young people not to toe those lines of people who discriminate, who go on the violent, mindset and do not care for human life.
Thank you. Iyanla.
Yes. I agree with everything. Not that I have to agree, but I can see everything that Gurudev says. And I also think that the pandemic came to stop us in our tracks because we had become so busy and so disconnected and so blind and so separated and so against. And the virus is saying, wait a minute, stop, be still. And in that stillness, all of the things that we have ignored, all of the things that we swept under the carpet, all of the things that we've denied have been revealed. We don't need to live in a world where people are barely earning enough to live and eat, and we think that's okay. We don't need to live in a world where people are still discriminated against because of the color of their skin. We don't need to live in a world where our leaders are totally disconnected and dissociated from the people who trust them. So the virus stopped us in our tracks, pulled the rug up off the floor, and said, now look at this. Look at this. And the pain that we've seen revealed has always been here, but it was asymptomatic. We were spreading it around and didn't even know it. The discrimination, the anger, the fear was always here, but we were walking around asymptomatic, spreading it, putting it, in every country, every city, every place. And here in the United States, we've just engaged in such bad behavior. We just needed a spanking. And I think, Miss Corona just spanked us and said, stop it, stop it. Look at this, stop it. Look what you're doing to the children. Look what you're doing to each other. And we had to look. I want to speak just a moment about the fear, because I've been teaching about the fear that we keep blaming on the pandemic. And I want to offer and invite us to consider that the fear has always been here. The three basic fears: fear of nature, because we never know what nature's going to do. It could be a tornado, it could be a tsunami, it could be a rainstorm, a snowstorm, we don't know. And as human beings addicted to control, we want to control everything. We can't control nature, so many of us fear nature. Fear of the unknown. I can't speak for India, but in the United States, we're afraid of the unknown. If we can't control it, name it, see it, touch it, we're afraid of it. And the two big fears in the unknown is fear of death and fear of change. People don't even want to get divorced because they fear to change, okay? They don't want to move to another city because they fear to change. And then fear of death. We act like we're born to keep living. You start dying the day you were born. But no one teaches us about the beauty or the power or the meaning of death. So we fear death. And then finally, fear of each other. People are afraid of each other. Black people are afraid of white people are afraid of brown people, men are afraid of women, because human beings are crazy. We are crazy. You could just be walking down the street and you never know if somebody just gonna take out something to hit you in your head. Human beings are crazy, okay? So we have a fear of each other. And now we gotta wear a mask. So not only am I scared of you, I can't identify you. These fears have always been here, and Miss Corona has said, deal with it. Now, how are you going to deal with this? Is there a kinder, gentler, more compassionate side of you that I can call forward? And instead of paying attention, now we're rushing to get out. So I think that this virus, this pandemic, is something that we call forward for our own healing and growth, to put an end to our bad behavior. And the young people are the ones who are going to lead the way.
Thank you so much, Tina.
Yeah. First, I just want to say it is a pleasure to be on this platform in this conversation. I think that the fact that we all have lived our lives in such a way that we are prepared to be in this conversation in a way that adds value is just a gift. And so I thank each one of you for the work that you're doing, and I'm really happy to be here. So thank you. You know, I really spend a lot of time looking at self and figuring out, you know, who this human being is. And the incongruency between the self that walks and the one inside is a huge challenge and problem, because so many people are not aware of the incongruent nature that lives within us. And that incongruency expresses itself in a lot of ways. This pandemic, the racism, all of that is to some degree based upon the fact that human beings have been telling lies and being incongruent since the beginning of time. And in order for us to truly become a space through which the balance of life as it is, you know, I believe meant to be lived, which is we are an opening through which something greater can move through. And if we are meant to be an opening through which something greater can move through, then the most important thing for us to do is to develop the ability, the skill, and the mastery of getting out of our way. And this quarantine has really dropped people into a relationship with themselves. And some people are discovering that that relationship is a dysfunctional relationship. Others are discovering that that relationship is a relationship that needs tending to. Others are discovering for the first time they've stopped and become still enough to realize that there is something more than the busyness they have been identified with. And so, you know, one of the things that I take great solace in is knowing that I can't figure out the mind of God, but I trust it implicitly. And so I know, and I have seen in the workings of this body that this body knows how to at least reach towards homeostasis. And as a reflection of the unseen, I believe that the planet knows how to reach for homeostasis, and that we are in some form of that reaching and the balancing that will go with us actually moving into a higher state. I will say that one of the most important things that I have learned for this human being is that is my pain, that has been unresolved, that is a hidden, secret, and recurring wound, absolutely must recur in order for me to bring more of myself to the experience, to the misconceived memory than I had available the last time it came around. So when it comes to the fact that we are revisiting ideas of war and the pain of war and the misconception of self that war of all kinds actually presents, it's an opportunity for us. And there are so many more aware, awake, and awakening people for us to come to this moment, to bring more of ourself, capital S, to these moments. Life is going to do what it does. Human evolution takes the time that it takes. But for us, we can each show up to these moments with a re-envisioned and more whole self. And in doing so, we will meet these moments in a way that absolutely allows more of God and life to move through us and change and transformation to take place.
Beautiful. Thank you. So I believe this pandemic is a portal of awakening. I believe that it has occurred on this planet at this time because humanity cannot continue to go down the rabbit hole that it has gone down, and there to be a shift. I also believe that we have been asleep on a certain level, and so we turned our backs for whatever reason, on racism, on sexism, and on the things that divide us. And as I was over the last couple of weeks, I've gotten a lot of phone calls from my Caucasian friends asking me, how do I feel? And starting to say, I don't know how to deal with this, and starting to deal with the fact that they have been oblivious to their privilege. And it caused me to go into a lot of different levels of feeling and expression within myself, looking at myself, because there was a time I grew up like 6 blocks from where George Floyd was murdered. And I knew what was going on in Minneapolis, but there was a thought in the back of my mind that said, if I can get educated, if I can become successful, if I can make enough money, I'm going to be able to move out of this paradigm, except I'm living in Malibu, I'm making money, and I still walk into Neiman Marcus and people are following me around. And it started me to say, I have got to wake up, and I loved what you just said, Tina. I have got to wake up to be a contributor to the healing. And so I think this portal that has opened has said, can you wake up? Can you stay awake? And all of these kids that are in, because I think a lot of them are young, who are saying, we have to remember that we're connected. We have to remember that we're interconnected, and that if it's happening to one, it's happening to all. And if we didn't get that, the pandemic is showing us. I also believe that healing transforms at the spiritual level. And that's what I wanted to open up the conversation here about, is like, we can have a spiritual awakening, and we can meditate, and we can vision, and we can journal, and we can do all of the yoga and all of these other things. But without the action that goes with it, transformation doesn't happen. And so in the opening video of Sri Sri, I was, I knew a lot of stuff about you, but I just continued to be in awe of what you brought to the planet. So I want to talk about the middle ground. I want to talk about how you bridge between spirituality and activism to create change. And so can you start that conversation?
Yes, Reverend Cynthia, you have put it in the right perspective. What spirituality if it doesn't transform into action? Spirituality, if it doesn't propel you into action, is of no use. You go to a bank and get money, and if you don't have any intention to go and spend it in the market, why do you have to go to the bank? Why do you have to have a credit card if you want to buy nothing, if you don't want to spend anything? So, spiritual energy is there or is here for all of us to actively contribute to the society. What is it we can do in society? Let's see. What is the birthright of every human being? Every human being has the right to live in a society free from violence. Are we providing a society for our children which is free from violence? Or are there classroom violence even today? And you know, especially in America, you see the gun culture has destroyed so many young minds and it has killed so many young people. Not just killed few young children, but it has caused so much trauma in the minds of hundreds and thousands of young people. So we are entitled to a safe world, secure world, free from violence. Are we doing anything towards that? This is the first question we all have to ask ourselves. Second is disease-free body. Are we educating our population to eat well, to sleep well, and to have proper routine and care for a healthy body? You know, healthy body amounts to healthy mind. If you are sick physically, your thinking goes bizarre. I know you can't think properly, you can't think right. You know, as Ilana just mentioned, something wrong with us. We become so afraid of everything. We are afraid of other human beings. And then this fear is with us only. We are afraid to look at our own feelings. We are afraid to be authentic. So are we authentic in in acknowledging our own feelings? This is something, or are we brushing them all under the carpet? This is a question we all have to ask ourselves. Here, spirituality helps us to be authentic. It brings clarity to mind and it keeps our heart pure and we become sincere in our action. If spirituality doesn't bring these three things, I would say you just forget about spirituality. No need of any spirituality. If it doesn't bring clarity of mind, purity of heart, and sincerity in action. And if we have these three things, anyone out there will recognize. You see, we convey more through our vibrations than through our words. A puppy in your home can show you how much the puppy loves you. It doesn't need a language. Just a glance from a child's eye, you can feel the warmth, the vibration. So we all have this beautiful vibration with us, but somewhere it is shrouded with stress and mistrust and fear. These three things have to be lifted. Fear of the other, a fear of the unknown, as you said, the fear. In fact, fear is just love standing upside down. When the love is invoked inside of you, you will see fear simply vanishes. And authenticity is something that we will have to cultivate in ourselves. That comes through education, through interaction, and through spiritual practices. So, in short, I would say a violence-free society, disease-free body, confusion-free mind, inhibition-free intellect. Our intellect, we have many different types of inhibition. North, south, east, west, black, brown, white. All these inhibitions are up there in the head. Inhibition about gender, we should do away with this. And spirituality will help you to see beyond this, beyond our inhibition. Inhibition-free intellect, trauma-free memory. If we are walking around with past traumas, we remain in a victim consciousness and do not acknowledge the goodness in the other person. Even though someone is coming to you with a good intention, your mind is clogged with trauma, so you will see them as enemy. This is a problem that we also have. Trauma-free memory, sorrow-free soul is the birthright of every single human being. And spirituality is that which can open your door towards all these virtues. Yeah, over to you, Cynthia.
Thank you. All righty, Yanla.
Well, I know we have an international audience here, but I can only speak to my experience as a woman of color in the United States. One of the things that I recognize is we are so programmed and so conditioned to be everything but authentic. We are programmed and conditioned to meet the needs, judgments, and expectations of everyone else. So my spiritual purpose on the planet is to be a teacher. So one of the things that the pandemic did for me was inspired, invited, encouraged, demanded, required that I teach in a bigger way. That I teach in a bigger way. You know, I have my own little circle and I have my school and everything. And, you know, my spirit was just blown up and say, go do this, because many of us have a deep, deep desire to do the things that Gurudev was saying, but we don't know how. In America, the biggest enemy to spirituality is religion. It's religion and the confines. And you got to do it this way, and you have to do it that way. And so my activism as a spiritual teacher was to share with people the knowledge and information I have been given over the past 45, 50 years about how to stand as a spiritual warrior on the planet. Sorrow-free soul, authentic expression, non-violent approach, because so many people have no idea how to do that. So yes, if your spirituality isn't making your life and the life of the world better, one of the things that I learned very early in my spiritual walk was, this ain't for you. We don't need you walking on water and flapping your angel wings. We need you to be a demonstration to others of the presence of spirit. As Tina said, to allow that something greater to express through you. And then you become a conduit through which greater can express to other people. That's my purpose. So that's what the pandemic did for me. It awakened me to, I was staying safe, I was staying in the box, afraid of criticism, afraid of who was gonna say what, because you know, some of the spiritual truths are a little strange. It's a little strange to people. And we've been programmed in this law and order society, you know, punishment, guilt and punishment, guilt and shame and victimization and all the external stuff. So when you start to tell people things like, love them anyway, what you mean, love them anyway? Look what they did, and you know. So I'm grateful for Miss Corona.
Absolutely.
He kicked me out the box,
Yeah.
helped me bring my spiritual activism to the forefront and push my fear of criticism to the background. Because if I have something that the Creator has given me, it's not for me. It's for me to share in a greater way, to anchor the presence of the Creator.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah. Yeah. I again, I totally vibrate and feel everything that is being said and say yes. And I love Iyana's deep bow. And I say to what you just said, deep bow, deep bow, deep bow. Um, you know, spiritual, how do we take spirituality and bridge activism? And again, the call is for us to not just understand the bigger picture and the idea of freedom and peace and oneness and family, but to activate that in our consciousness and our everyday experience. And so I think that one of the great ways that we become, to use Iyanla's term, spiritual warriors, is to step into that training ground within self right now. Like, what are you doing inside of yourself in your consciousness? And if in fact, it's been said by spiritual teachers since the beginning of time, that starts with the question of who am I? And as we begin to value the self, first discover that there is a self inside that is more than that image that we look at in the mirror. When we discover that there is a self, and that self has an innate agreement with the bigger energy of life, then we must show up honoring that self. And the best way, or the beginning of honoring that self, is to be curious about it, is to develop a relationship with that self. If you don't know what that means in this moment, then it means to begin to simply ask the question, what is self? Who am I? If I'm more than that image in the mirror, then who am I? Because stepping into that kind of personal inquiry allows us to align with something that is greater than the machinations of our conditioned and fearful minds. So that's the starting point. And then a way in which you can actively see, because as you begin to discover self, there is a heightened and enhanced natural desire to love it, protect it, and allow it to grow so that it can fulfill its purpose. And so as we begin to love it and commit to being a space where it can have its full sway with us, it begins to sort of dictate not just our behavior, but our environments. And loving self will make us warriors so that we can challenge the society that we're in, so that we can challenge the families and relationships that we're in, so that we can challenge our own inner behavior. And three things that I always encourage is look for the places inside of yourself where you are blaming, judging, attacking, and proving. If in fact you find yourself in that space, then that is the smallest, most unenlightened part of you trying to hold on to your idea of yourself. And so that part is protecting itself through blaming. It's protecting itself through judging. It's protecting itself through attacking. It's protecting itself through proving. And when you see yourself in those energetics, just stop and ask, and who am I? And the capital S self, what would the capital S self be doing if in fact I let go of this protection of my identity? Doing it at the personal level allows us to stand strong and be, I think about Martin Luther King and his, I have a dream speech, and the phrase, where he says that, I can see it. I may not join you there. I may not get to be there with you, but I can see it. When we are living our lives for that thing that is moving through us, then hanging on to this flesh is not the most important thing. Allowing this flesh and the consciousness that it houses to move through us is the most important thing. And when we begin to think like that, we begin to make new choices, and the activism starts inside of ourselves. And we say, we know what to say yes to, and then we know what to be accountable to, and then we know what to vision for.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot, since quarantine started. And I'm very clear that we live in an infinite field of possibilities. In fact, I'm very clear that that energy is the essence of which I'm made. And if that is true, then I'm a co-creator with that energetic, and I get to create shift by shifting with me. So what I've been looking at is, how do I creatively regenerate myself? And I'm like you, I'm a teacher and a speaker. And it's like, how do I regenerate so that I can step beyond my limited thinking? I love what Sri said about the traumatic memories, because that ran me for a really long time. How do I step beyond those to the places where I push the edge, where I step beyond those walls, where I step out and I dare to challenge any limited thinking within myself and stand for who I say I am and walk my talk. And I think that that's what's been happening in my circles. People are awakening and going, I've always said I'm not racist. I've always said I'm loving. I've always said I'm compassionate. And yet I will sit in a room and not stand for it. I will walk into a space and keep my mouth shut when I know that something's out of integrity. And so I feel like the activism it's like to be aware that you are one with that infinite presence, and you all also have an obligation, because you're on this planet, to take a stand for who you say you are, what you believe, and how you want to move on this planet. And so I guess I know we only have like an hour here with Sri, but I want to ask, what is the one thing you want people to catch so that they can walk away from this conversation and move into action in a powerful, dynamic, and mighty way? So how about I start with Ian Lantina, and we'll end with Sri and give him the final word.
Well, these three powerful women are coming with so many ideas, and I think people are going to catch all these ideas from these three powerful women in this conversation. So I'm more or less like a witness for what is unfolding. But one thing I would like to say here is, as Tina already mentioned, the first thing is to find out, who am I? Looking into the fact, what is this consciousness? Who are we? Who am I? That's a very, very important question. This question is the pinnacle of maturity of mind. If our intellect is mature, then this question must arise in us. Now, see, we have many identities. We take on an identity. I am a teacher or I am a student. Every teacher is a student too. If you are a teacher, you have got to be student, lifelong student. So you're student of your life. At the same time, you intentionally or unintentionally, you keep teaching others. In India, there is a proverb, I salute the bad guy first and then the good teacher. Yeah. Because that bad guy is teaching you on his own cost. He is falling into the pit and telling you, hey, watch, Here is a black hole, don't fall. I have fallen. So, this proverb, it's an old proverb, it says, salute the bad guy first and then the good one, because the good one is showing you a way and moving, not at his or her cost.
Yeah.
But the bad guy is showing something at his cost or her cost. So I would say, no, we need to inquire, who am I? This is the spiritual aspect. Find love inside. You are a fountain of love. Each individual have come to this planet as as a fountain of joy and bubbling love. But we have forgotten. We have forgotten to smile. We have forgotten to be in that carefree atmosphere that we were brought into this planet. As Ilana said, there is fear about everything. And to get out of the fear, we have to go within. When we go within, we see that innocent, pure corner of our heart is still alive. It's still kicking deep inside you. Recognize that spirit within us. We need to recognize that spirit within us, number one. Then, how do I do it? I have 100 things to do. So when so many things are in front of me, how can I do it? Even though you put so many aphorisms, you tell your mind so many times, this is what I want, still your emotions are not in your control. They just takes over. Then I would say attend to breath, because directly we cannot control our mind, but we can do it through our breath. Every emotion has a specific rhythm in the breath. So if we attend to breath, you will see that you are out of all those negative cloud that is bothering you day in and night, though you didn't want them. Nobody wants all these negative feelings. But neither at home, nor in school, nor in any places of religious worship, they were teachers how to handle this stuff called mind. So our worst enemy is our own mind. So if we can master our mind through our own breath, because mind is not so tangible, but what is semi-tangible is our breath. Attending to the breath, we can create harmony within ourselves. When there is harmony in us, I tell you, it just spreads around us. It just resonates with people around us. And this is what I found. See, when I had this challenge in Colombia, I had to talk to these people, FARC guerrillas, 15 of their commandos. So when I went there first, they said, no, we are not interested. We believe in Marxist and Lenin's principle. We don't believe in anything spiritual. This is their first sentence. They were not ready even to talk to me. Also, I look little different coming from India, color-wise and otherwise, hair and everything. So, but then they agreed they came to check me out when I was giving a talk at the university. Then they came to talk to me. We had 3 days of conversation with them. And at the end of the third day, they came out and unilaterally declared ceasefire. A 52-year of bloody conflict came to an end. Neither the government nor the journalists were ready to believe what they said. They said, we are going to adopt the Gandhian principle of non-violence, and we are going to walk this path that you have asked us to do. I told them, look, what is that? You are fighting for social justice. I am all for social justice, but violence is not going to give you that. So let us work out. 52 years you have tried in the violent manner. 2 million people had lost their life. But why not we now try something different? They agreed, they asked forgiveness with the victims, and then the peace process began. Why I'm saying this is inside every culprit, there is a victim crying for help. If we look at that victim, heal them, and only spirituality can do that. Meditation can do that. Breathing can help us to calm our mind and act from a serene space which we all carry within us.
Well, in the short amount of time that we have left, because I'm a kindergarten teacher, I want to make sure everybody got it. So breathe, people. Learn how to breathe and calm the mind down so that the mind will mature, so that you can master the mind. And when the mind calms down and when you're breathing, you've got to look for where you're blaming, where you're judging, where you are trying to prove, and where you declared yourself to be a victim. And that doesn't have anything to do with anybody else. So own your stuff. If it's in you, it is of you, it is from you, it is for you. The other thing I think is important is to really make that distinction between mind and between self and self, so that you can step into who you are as a co-creator of your experiences. And I would sum that all up to say, think higher.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Big mind. That's what we are.
Yeah. And as we navigate our way to mastery of all of this, understand that it is a process. Stay in the process. Also, you don't have to know what to do. Just know that you want to do. And then know that the listening universe responds. So at any point, the starting place is literally, how can I move beyond my limitations? Just asking that question with an open, thriving heart will allow the answers to mystically find their way into your life, into the body of your affairs, and into ultimately your consciousness. So just ask. If you don't know where to start, just ask. And you'll wind up on a platform like this, listening. Or you'll wind up in one of the Yanla's classes, or you'll wind up at Sri Sri's world events. Just ask. Just want it. And be accountable to that wanting. Have the faith that that wanting will take you to the next step.
Can I just say one thing, because that is so important? I had this conversation with my 26-year-old grandson yesterday. He was upset about something. And I say, Olua, pray about it. Just pray about it. He said, I pray. And I don't hear nothing. I don't hear nothing. I said, Olua, I'm sharing with you what I sense and feel in my body. Yeah, but I pray and I don't get any answer. I said, Olua, what if this is the answer? Give up what you think the answer is supposed to look like. So when Tina says, ask, don't reject what shows up in the moment as a result of your asking, because you don't recognize what it is. That's a huge thing. I have so many people that signed up for my program who are trying to leave the program because they can't find this paper and they can't do that paper and they don't know how to, and the click and the button and the link is. How you respond to the issue is the issue.
Mm.
That's the issue. Look at how you are reacting to a broken link in the website. That is a vast body of teaching and learning. So yeah, pray and ask, and then be willing to know that when the answer shows up, it probably will be the last thing you expect. I'm going to say that. I'm going to do a deep bow because I've got another call that I've got to take.
Very nice. Thank you.
Cynthia,
Thank you all.
deep bow to everybody. Thank you.
I want to close out by telling you that you're a miraculous unfolding, that you're here by a divine appointment, and that your presence on this